And welcome to another episode of Hazardous Verbal Waste. I am your host, YuGiOh Chan. Today is Sunday, June 30th, 2019. Got a lot of cool stuff to go over this week, including my interpretation of the coverage of the North American World Championship qualifier for YuGiOh. So, without further ado, let's get right down to it, shall we? In YuGiOh news, YuGiOh begins brand new manga series. The story that began with the young duelist YuGiMoto has continued through the generations, with new protagonists wielding the heart of the cards, attempting to make their way through the world by building their own decks in the game of Duel Monsters. The card battling anime series has bounced from the schoolgrounds in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the technological future with Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, and even alternate realities in the form of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Now, the duel is about to begin once again. Online news source of Anime News Network broke the news on their official Twitter account that Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Structures would be coming soon as a newly released manga. The new series will follow the young Shoma and will shine a spotlight on the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards available as part of the real-life OCG collection. While the details of the story itself have yet to be revealed in full, the series will be created by Masashi Sato, who created the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D series. We'll be sure to keep an eye out and see if there are any references to the past Duel Monsters series. Yu-Gi-Oh! As an anime differs from its sister series such as Pokemon and Digimon, whereas the creatures in those series are living, breathing creatures that inspire real-life games. In Digimon, the Digidestined visit the digital world to save the world. In Pokemon, Ash Ketchum forms bonds with his pocket monsters to become the greatest trainer around. In Yu-Gi-Oh! However, the monsters are held within cards, usually being released by a virtual reality system that each duelist wears on their arms. Yu-Gi-Oh! Also differs thanks in part to its reliance on the supernatural, as ancient Egyptian lore has an impact on the monsters themselves, along with the story running through the original anime series, much like the anime series Sword Art Online. I know I'm interested in seeing this new manga series come out. I hope that, like with past manga series, there'll be some promo cards available with it. Let me know in the comments or send me an email and let me know what you think about this new manga series. Also in Yu-Gi-Oh! News, we now have our representatives for the World Championship in Berlin, Germany. Dakota Angeloff, Raymond Dai, Manet Dewar, and Wei Li won their qualifications from the World Championship qualifier, while Jesse Cotton and Gabriel Vargas punched their tickets to the World Championship from topping the World's Qualifying Points playoff on Friday of the World Championship qualifier. Dakota Angeloff from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, used his Crusadia Thunder Dragon Danger deck to best the competition and win the 2019 North America World Championship qualifier. Dakota Angeloff took first place in this past weekend's North America World Championship qualifier, earning himself an invitation to compete on the global stage in Berlin, Germany in August. His deck included 3 Danger Sukachinko, 3 Danger Nessie, 3 Danger Jackalope, 1 Danger Bigfoot, 3 Crusadia Reclusia, 1 Crusadia Draco, 1 Crusadia Maximus, 1 Crusadia Arborea, 1 Defrag Dragon, 1 Eclipse Wyvern, 1 Omni Dragon, 1 Batteryman Solar, 2 Thunder Dragon Dark, 1 Thunder Dragon Hawk, 1 Thunder Dragon Duo, 3 Thunder Dragon, 1 Thunder Dragon Roar, 3 Chaos Dragon Levianeer, 3 White Dragon, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce that one, so I'm not going to try, and 3 Black Dragon Collapse Serpent. And those are the monsters in his deck. For more on what cards he used in his deck, I'll make sure to include the deck list in the show notes. Angeloff has played the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game for 17 years, and all of his experience dueling paid off this past weekend as he secured an invitation to compete at the World Championship in Berlin. Angeloff used the Crusadia Thunder Dragon Danger deck on the recommendation of one of his friends who gave him the deck list he used this past weekend. Angelov is proud to be able to represent North America in the upcoming World Championship and is looking forward to proving his strength as a duelist. You can check out all of the coverage of the event on the YuGiOh official YouTube channel. I'll make sure to include a link to that in the show notes. That's pretty much all we have for YuGiOh news this week. On to the next segment. In gaming news, Microsoft shifts focus to a single next-generation console. Last year, Phil Spencer told the E3 crowd that Microsoft was focused on building its next generation of consoles, plural. Microsoft, Spencer told the crowd, was deep into architecting the next Xbox consoles, plural. Now the company has changed its plans, but doesn't necessarily want to admit that publicly. In a recent interview with Business Insider, Spencer hedged, claiming that his statements were a reference to the diskless Xbox One S and the now somewhat detailed enhancements intended for the still unbranded Xbox Next. Last year, we said consoles, and we've shipped a console, and we've now detailed another console. I think that's plural, Spencer said. But according to other sources at the company, that's just a weak attempt to avoid acknowledging that the company's plans have changed. Initially, Microsoft was going to build two devices, a high-end product, Anaconda, and a lower-end model, Lockhart. It was never entirely clear how these related to the Project Scarlet codename that had also leaked, though it was possible that Scarlet referred to the entire Xbox Next platform, software and hardware, while Anaconda was the codename for the console hardware alone. Regardless of how the codenames evolved, the plan is now to bring a single high-end console to market under the Project Scarlet codename. Apparently, Microsoft changed the plans for multiple reasons. First, the company ran into trouble with developers who were focusing on creating an experience that ran well on the lower-end Lockhart device before scaling them up for the higher-end Anaconda. This runs the risk of introducing quality differences that might not favor Microsoft in inevitable Xbox versus PS5 comparisons. This point was also heard by Digital Foundry at E3, which lends it some credence. The other shifting argument has to do with xCloud and the availability of game streaming. The intent of Lockhart was to open new markets to Xbox gamers that might be put off by the higher price commanded by Anaconda. But if this space can be met by xCloud and game streaming, then there's no point to Lockhart in the first place. Consumer buying habits and the decline of physical game media sales would undoubtedly have been closely examined here, since the two markets don't necessarily overlap. In fact, one might think that the lower-end gamers that would be otherwise attracted to Lockhart would be poor fits for xCloud in the first place, as they're less likely to live in areas with high internet speeds and the necessary low-latency connections. Whether this is true or not, it obviously wasn't a big enough issue to prevent the lower-end console's cancellation. One of the interesting questions about the current console generation that personally I wish Sony and Microsoft would answer, they probably won't, is how well the Xbox One X and Sony PS4 Pro sold in the first place. Sony only releases combined sales figures for its consoles, while all estimates for Xbox One sales are, well, estimates. Microsoft stopped releasing sales figures once it became clear that its console was going to command roughly half the market share of Sony's. Today, the Xbox One is estimated to have been outsold by over 2-1 by the PS4. The irony here, of course, is that by embracing the concept of mid-generation upgrades, the console manufacturers weakened the idea of a generation at all. PC game industry has never really adopted this framing except by proxy. The reason is simple. We don't need it. If you have an Ivy Bridge CPU and an NVIDIA RTX card, you have two completely different generations of hardware. And it turns out they get along just fine. The only reason for Microsoft to phase out the current generation of Xbox systems at all, as opposed to keeping them in market to provide an entry-level experience on next-generation games, ultimately comes down to simplifying things for developers and consumers who aren't used to dealing with this kind of issue in gaming. As for whether focusing on a single console model versus two is a good idea, we need to know the expected pricing. Microsoft and Sony aren't quite willing to talk about that yet. Looks like that's all we have for gaming news this week. On to the next segment. Before we get to the next segment, a quick word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, I really do hope you love hazardous verbal waste. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know, it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks. Or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. So here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code HAZARDOUS, and you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with code HAZARDOUS. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts. In tech news, Raspberry Pi 4 wields a faster CPU and can drive two 4K displays. Only costs $35. The Raspberry Pi Foundation last week unveiled the next major iteration of its popular mini PC, the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B. While the new model looks similar to previous variants, there are some key upgrades that embolden the company to pitch this as a potential desktop PC of sorts. Chief among them is a bump in CPU hardware. It may not boast the best CPU for gaming, but one of the key ingredients in the Raspberry Pi 4 is a Broadcom BCM2711 SoC. This consists of four 1.5 GHz 64-bit ARM Cortex-A72 CPU cores and should offer a nice performance boost over the Cortex-A53 CPU inside the Raspberry Pi 3. Here's a hint, it's up to 3 times faster. Users can also select from 1 gig, 2 gig, or even 4 gig of RAM this time around. For reference, the Raspberry Pi 3 only came with 1 gig of RAM, which is a bit on the lean side for desktop use. Make no mistake, the Raspberry Pi Foundation is definitely pitching that angle. Quote, "This is a comprehensive upgrade, touching almost every element of the platform. For the first time, we provide a PC-like level of performance for most users, while retaining the interfacing capabilities and hackability of the classic Raspberry Pi line," unquote, the Raspberry Pi Foundation said. Here's a rundown of the other key specs. Full throughput gigabit Ethernet, dual band 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.0, 2 USB 3 and 2 USB 2 ports, dual 4K monitor support, micro SD storage card up to 50 megabaud, 40-pin GPIO connector, video core VI graphics supporting OpenGL ES 3.x, 4K P60 hardware decode of HEVC video, complete compatibility with earlier Raspberry Pi products. For the Raspberry Pi 4, the developers moved from USB Micro B to USB-C for the power connector. This gives the mini PC an additional 500 milliamps of current and a full 1.2 amp for downstream USB devices. The new model also replaces the full-size HDMI Type-A connector for a pair of Type-D micro connectors. These types of cables are a little harder to come by, but it gives the Raspberry Pi 4 dual 4K monitor support. We have yet to test No one has yet to test a Raspberry Pi 4, but the people over at Tom's Hardware put one through the ringer and noted some impressive performance gains over the previous model. They also found that it mostly lived up to the claim of being usable as a desktop PC, at least for general purpose chores. Don't ditch your gaming PC for one of these. For those who want to go that route, there is a $120 desktop kit that includes a 4 gig Raspberry Pi 4, an official case, power supply and mouse and keyboard, a pair of HDMI cables, a copy of the updated The Raspberry Pi Beginner's Guide, and a pre-installed 16 gig microSD card. The Raspberry Pi 4 arrives a bit ahead of schedule and with a familiar form factor. You don't know quite what to expect when the Raspberry Pi Foundation closed out its classic mini PC line with its $25 Raspberry Pi 3 Model A Plus last November. Currently, the Raspberry Pi 4 is available starting at $35. The 2GB and 4GB models cost $45 and $55 respectively. It is available in the Raspberry Pi store and at the company store in Cambridge, UK, as well as from a few authorized retailers. I'm a little excited about this because I was actually looking at building a Raspberry Pi tablet for my wife. I might consider picking this up. I mean, for $55, can't go wrong. See if maybe I can't build her a desktop PC that she can use for her daily chores here at home and on the go. As soon as I'm able to do that, I'll possibly even do an episode dedicated to the Raspberry Pi 4 and my experience with it. That's pretty much all we have for tech news this week, and that's pretty much all we have for the episode, so on to the final thoughts. Before we get to the final thoughts, here's some promos from some other shows that you might find interesting.
Looking into the darkness, you can feel your heart racing. The heaviness of sorrow and dread take control, and the voice inside you says, "Don't go in there." Now join your hosts Ashley Ernie and Bill Reed as we venture down the weird and mysterious.
Find the Don't Go In There podcast on your favorite podcast listening app, and remember, don't go in there.
What's up, everybody? My name's Tim from the Shut Up and Dad podcast, and I hope you're enjoying this show. If you're looking for some laughs after you finish listening to this episode, come check out Shut Up and Dad. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and your favorite podcast platform by searching Shut Up and Dad, or simply head to our website, shutupanddad-podcast.com, where you can listen to episodes, read our blog, and find links to our show. That's shutupanddad-podcast.com.
Well, here we are at the end of yet another episode of Hazardous Verbal Waste. I hope you've enjoyed the show so far. Just a recap of this episode. We learned of a new YuGiOh manga series coming out. We got to know the North American World Championship qualifier team for YuGiOh. We learned of Microsoft's plans for the next-gen Xbox console. And we learned about the new Raspberry Pi 4 Model B specs. A little bit of what I've been up to this week. I've been playing through the Kalen Kessler event on Duel Links. Been binging episodes of every Yu-Gi-Oh series in preparation for the release of Link Evolution. Currently, I'm $15 shy of finishing paying for the Link Evolution pre-order. I'm $15 in on the pre-order for Gears 5. And I've actually started a journey to becoming a voiceover actor myself. There are several ways you can contact the show if you have any questions or comments that you would like to make. You can email us, hazardousverbal@gmail.com. You can contact us through Skype and leave a voice message. The Skype ID is Ichimoto1. You can use the contact form on the Contact Us page of hazardousverbal.com. You can reach us through Facebook, JNorth Media page, or the HVW Podcast Fans page. You can contact us on Twitter. The Twitter ID is Tosi-sama. It's TOUSISAMA. You can get a hold of me through the Yu-Gi-Oh! Amino app. The ID there is Shiro-chan. You can get a hold of us. You can play with me through Duel Links. My Duel Links friend code is 456-724-337. I look forward to playing with you guys there. You can get a hold of us on Instagram, Hazardous Verbal. Or you can get a hold of us on Tumblr, Hazardous Verbal Waste. That's pretty much all we have for this week. This is Shiro-chan, signing off. Peace.